Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Are we good? Oh, there's a mic there too. I'll be pink, you can be green. Okay. Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming out to our Truth and Tuition hearing this year. My name is Brad Mortensen, the president here at Utah State, joined by our student body president, Brandon Sorensen. And we'll be talking to you about the proposed tuition and fee increases for the 2026-2027 academic year. Brandon, do you want to say anything as we get started?
Yeah, we're so grateful that you're all here in person and then also online as well. For our online friends, if you want to answer any questions or have any thoughts, feel free to drop that in the chat. But very grateful for you all to be here. This is a great opportunity for you to ask questions, come to better understandings, and also give feedback for us as well. So.
Okay, with that, I'm just going to begin. And because I do have to excuse myself a little bit to get to the Faculty Senate meeting because they're booked at the same time, unfortunately. But hopefully, we'll be able to share the information and get through all the questions that you have. So the whole truth and tuition process, it's actually a state law that we're required to provide notice to the student body of proposed increases before they get approved for the upcoming year. So we're fulfilling that statutory obligation today. And to give you all a sense of the timeline of how this plays out, it really syncs up with because our tuition decisions are tied with what funding we get from the state legislature for a number of reasons that I'll talk about. So this calendar kind of interweaves key points from our on-campus, our university-based processes, as well as what's happening at the state legislature. So you can see we've already presented these to the Student Fee Tuition Review Committee and the USUSA Executive Council. Last Friday, the Executive Appropriations Committee of the legislature made their kind of final budget decisions, and then they will wrap all of those up this week. We're having our Truth and Tuition hearing today, and that's because the legislative session doesn't end until this upcoming Friday. We're still not pinpoint accurate on exactly what the tuition increases will be. We are more so with fees, but we'll be narrowing that down as the legislature wraps up, and so that in time for the Board of Trustees committee meeting on March 20th, which Brandon is a voting member of the Board of Trustees. So he sits on kind of two sides of this process. They'll adopt a recommendation that then we jointly, Brandon, myself, and the chair of our trustees, Tessa White, will present to the Board of Higher Education at the end of the month. So all of this happens pretty rapidly. Just to share a couple of data points with you all to begin with, this slide shows the percentage of tuition dollars that each campus, each university and college in the state pays compared to the total overall budget. So you can see here at USU, we're a little over 37% that tuition pays of the budget, meaning the state is paying over 62% of the cost to operate the university. So relatively, we're getting a good deal compared to most of the schools in the state. The community colleges are subsidized at a higher rate to try to keep their tuition lower, which will come up again in a minute. But for all of the universities, we have that lowest tuition part of the budget. So that's, thank your state legislators for supporting your education at Utah State when you get a chance. Another thing here is we hear a lot about how rapidly tuition increases compared to inflation. And this chart kind of shows if you go back 10 years and just start tuition at $100 and inflation at $100, the consumer price index, how have they changed over this period of time? And you can see tuition was going up more rapidly until about 4 years ago, and then the lines crossed. And now, so over the last 10 years, tuition has gone up on average about 3.1%. Inflation's gone up 3.5%. So again, here in the state of Utah, and this is true for almost all of the schools in the state, inflation has gone up more rapidly than tuition. That ties back again to the support we've gotten from the legislature and being able to try to keep costs down as much as we can for all of you, our students, even though we still know that it's a significant investment from all of you. Another data point, just for context. Sorry, I don't mean to kill all the excitement, but so you can see where your tuition dollars go. We pool tuition dollars with the state tax funds that we get, and this is how we spend it across the university, where most of it goes into over half into instruction and academic support. A little less than a quarter kind of goes into the operations of the university, how we pay for the IT systems, the buildings, the administration, that type of thing. Some of it goes to research, some goes to public service, and then some goes back into student success and scholarship initiatives. But with that, let me jump into the details for this year's tuition increase. When the legislature funds certain things, they set a total amount that they're funding, but they only provide 75% of that funding. And they expect the schools to come up with the rest of it, which usually 99% of the time that's done through a tuition increase. And those things are specifically salary increases, salary and benefits increases for our employees, as well as something called internal service funds, which is a charges that the state gives to all of the colleges and universities and other state entities to run statewide systems, whether that's risk insurance or the motor pool or things like that. So this year, the legislature last Friday announced that they were funding a 2.5% salary increase for all of our faculty and staff across higher education here at USU included. The amount that we would need to come up with through tuition for that salary increase is a little over $1.8 million, almost $1.9 million. And that just to generate that amount of revenue with our student population, it takes a 1.31% tuition increase. The health and dental increase is honestly higher than we've seen for a number of years. But again, that goes across all of state government. It's a common rate. And we've seen a lot of cost increases there this year. So that's up almost 12% for health, almost 5% for dental. Need to raise $1.4 million, and that's just a little over 1% tuition increase. And then 0.4% for those internal service funds, 0.04, I should say, which gets us to a 2.36% increase. And then the other item that we have in our budget every year that we don't have a designated funding source for, and so we often, most of the time, build that into the tuition increase as well, is funding for faculty promotions. Twice during their career, faculty go up for a promotion either from assistant professor to associate professor or associate, and that's when they get tenure, or from associate professor to full professor. And when they do that, they're, by our practice and policy, they're entitled to a salary increase. And so this year we have potential for 86 faculty to get those, which is a little over $1.4 million. And so that's where the other 1% comes from. For right now, what we're estimating is a 3.36 percentage increase. That could still, those numbers could change until the legislature wraps up at midnight on Friday. So what we're officially published for today is a range between 3 to 3.5%. But right now we're kind of pinpointed in at 3.36. And we are not proposing any other things to be funded out of tuition this year. At other times in the past, we have included other types of funding sources that we feel like we need to support the university and to make sure you have a quality experience here. But we don't have anything like that, largely because we are getting some extra performance funding from the legislature this year as well, hopefully as they wrap up this week, and we'll be able to cover some other urgent needs across the university with that pot of funds. So that's what the proposed tuition increase would be. And before I turn it over to Brandon to talk about fees, any questions? I'm not seeing any in the room. There's a microphone here, or any online. So Brandon, don't push the top button.
Don't press the top button. Okay. To give a little bit of context on how the student fee board process works here in Logan across a statewide system, for any fee to be increased, decreased, or send the same, we have what's called the student fee board process, which is chaired by our executive vice president, Max Alder, and has a combination of both academic senators, executive leadership board, and statewide vice presidents that sit on these bodies. And they're each assigned one of the many student fees that you're paying for, and they will meet with the administrator over that and review how is the funding going, how is it being used, do we need an increase or a decrease, and just to be good stewards of the money. So with this year's fee board process wrapped up, the approved three fees increase recommendations was the Aggie Shuttle, which is increased by $1.73, which brings that to a total of $24. There's the athletics increase by $29.72, which brings that to a total of $145. If you do note on the presentation or just in general, that we are proposing that this is a one-time increase and that'll be reevaluated next year to see how that money is being used. And then that third one is a campus rec increase by $10.46, which brings that to a total of $62.62.
Okay. There are some areas of tuition that aren't increasing this year. Uh, in the past, the differential tuition that gets charged for a number of our programs has gone up by the percentage that the general tuition increase has gone up, but we're not doing that this year. Those rates, the differential tuition rates will be the same for per credit hour as they are this year. The tuition for the veterinary medicine program is not going up. And then our technical education tuition rate that is for our programs in USU Eastern, Moab, and Blanding, that is $92 with a $3 fee. We're changing that to match the other tech schools in the state, so it'll be a flat $95 tuition, but it's the same $95. So a little different definition, but the same dollar amount. Also, in with our statewide campuses, as some of you might be aware right now, in Price, Moab, and Blanding, if you have less than 65 credit hours, there's a lower tuition rate that's very close to the Salt Lake Community College and Snow College tuition rate, which, as those programs came over 10 years ago as a community college, we tried to maintain that tuition rate. And our goal over the next 2 to 3 years is to work on establishing that same type of community college associate degree tuition rate at all of our statewide campuses. So there's some equity there. And so this year we're not increasing the tuition for courses taught at Uinta Basin, Tooele, Brigham City, and Southwest Wasatch areas for the first, if you're in your first 65 credit hours. And we hope to establish this common goal. This slide kind of gives you an idea. You can see what the USU Eastern tuition rate is for a full year, full-time resident student, what students, other statewide campuses are paying now. This is just tuition, not fees. And then what Salt Lake Community College and Snow College are. So you can see kind of the inequity there. And we want to try to bring that tall bar down and equal with those others for that community college role that happens at the statewide campuses. But this year, we're just starting by not having it go up anymore. Okay, so this is the summary of the things that we're proposing on the tuition side. 3 to 3.5%, likely in that 3.3, what was it, 6, Whitney? 3.36 is what we're pinpointing right now for Logan and for the statewide campuses that are above 65 credit hours, and same thing for Eastern below 65 credit hours. And then the rest of the statewide campuses would stay flat above 65 credit hours. Hopefully that's perfectly clear. But that's the tuition increase proposal. And with fees.
So diving back into fees, per UC policy R516, every 5 years, all the UC schools kind of do a big evaluation of the student fees. Obviously, it's done yearly, but this is kind of a comprehensive review of looking into all the fees, whether asking for an increase or decrease. It's just a big deep dive. So kind of breaking it down, the Logan campus area, we made the recommendation for 2 student fees to be swapped into tuition. And that's for the full-time equivalent. So that library fee of $32.01, and then as well as that technology fee of, oh gosh, $56.72. I guess I should be getting glasses. And then looking at a Logan campus breakdown for under 65 credits, that is, wow, I cannot read from that angle. 18.72% student fee decrease, but a 2.27% tuition increase. Breaking down into the technical education world, which President Mortensen talked a little bit about, there will be a $3 student fee that will be moved into tuition, which will result in a flat 95 credit hour tuition. And then swap areas for our statewide system. Fees shown are for full-time enrollment, 12 to 18 credits per semester, which is the full-time enrollment, $88.73 of athletics and or instruction and student support. So depending on the campus, each of our statewide campuses kind of vary in what their student fees look like. And then, so breaking that down for statewide campuses, 34.38% student fee decrease, and then a 4.19% tuition increase. So essentially, the swap will result in a net zero impact to students, but it's just to promote the transparency across.
So hopefully this swap makes sense. Like Brandon said, it doesn't, there's no net dollar impact, but we're trying to make sure that we're compliant with the state policy on what student fees can pay for and what tuition covers. So with that, I'm an old budget analyst, and so I just had to do a few charts to try to demonstrate all this. So indulge me. Jessica thinks they're kind of dumb, but I think hopefully this helps you see that there really is no, the purpose of this is to help you see there's no net impact of the swap for what you pay. But we do have to distinguish it on the tuition side and on the fee side. So it's a little confusing, but unfortunately, since I won a live auction raffle for LASIK surgery about 15 years ago, I can see the backside, Brandon. I highly recommend.
Gotta let me know about that.
But is the best thing I ever won, I swear. But you can see all these components we talked about on the tuition slide. This is just for the Logan campus on this slide. So right now, tuition for a full-time resident undergraduate student for 2 semesters is $7,831. And there's some pennies in there, but just for rounding's sake. The increase at that 3.36 would be $263. The amount for 2 semesters, which is the difference from the number Brandon just shared, is $177 that comes from tuition to fees. So overall, it's a 5.62% tuition increase, which is a lot. That's higher than we would like it to be. However, on the fee side, you see that, once you add in the additions, the $84 for 2 semesters for a full-time student that Brandon discussed, and then the decrease of $177, it's to fees, it's a net almost 10% decrease. So the overall, we're adding, it's a 3.95% tuition and fees increase that's being proposed for this upcoming 2026-2027 academic year. So with that, any questions, concerns? Oh, we have a question online. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a question online. Why are we increasing fees for athletics and campus recreation if they are not necessary for student success?
You want to talk about some of the debates there, Brandon?
Yeah. So to kind of like what we talked about at the very beginning, all these fees get introduced through the student fee board process, which is composed of a mixture of student officers as well as student at large. This is a great opportunity, and we did see with the athletics fee to be heavily debated, making sure that voices are heard and the variety of perspectives on that. With that one, it is proposed that it's going towards helping with mental health, and nutrition for student athletes, as well as creating job opportunities for graduate students, as well as just student job opportunities with that. But there were some comments like you did raise with that of making sure that we're seeing the direct impact towards students. That's why we did recommend to move 2 of those fees into tuition, because at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that your student fees are going directly to you. Part of the increase with this is we are transitioning to the Pac-12, which is really exciting for our university and athletic department. And with that, there's obviously some extra funding that's needed to perform better in the pack, thinking of it almost like an F1 race. If you're slotted in the very last slot, it's going to be pretty hard to get up to the middle or up to the front of it. But you did notice on the presentation that we did put this at a 1-year evaluation. So that means next year it'll be looked at again to be seen how is students' money being stewarded, how has AD Walker's Show Me campaign been performing, so we can kind of reevaluate that next year. But that is a great question.
I would just add to that, or go ahead.
Do you want to come up to this mic?
Yeah, we're having, for those of you on Zoom, we have someone come up to the microphone so that you can hear them.
She's approaching.
I've never been a part of the student fee board process, but to my understanding, the student fee board is more there like as the student opinion, but they don't actually approve, like they're not the last say on fees. So like, are those approved 100% or are they still going through?
I'll talk about that. So you're absolutely right. The student fee, the thing about student fees is that is also in state policy is it's required that we have some type of student input process, and every campus uses that a little bit differently, but we use our student fee board here so that the student voice can be reflected, but they are only making recommendations. It comes forward. And then it comes forward to me. I make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and then the Board of Trustees have to take action on it to the Board of Higher Education. And then ultimately it's the State Board of Higher Education who has the final say on both tuition and fee increases.
Okay, so the athletics fee was completely approved or we're still in that process?
So we are still in this timeline here where the Board of Trustees has to review it on March 20th, and then the Board of Higher Education on March 27th.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just asking for clarification.
Yeah, no, that's a good clarification. That's a great question.
The great thing about that process is it does go through so many channels and perspectives of students, administration, and the board. So when it does come as the ultimate recommendation to the Board of Higher Ed, that we can very much understand a lot of the variety of perspectives on it. And that's why it's also good to have this truth in tuition as well, so we can bring this in as we present that.
Yeah, because these the topics and concerns that you all raise here will go forward as part of those deliberations that the trustees and the Board of Higher Ed has. So
if you also want to state your name as well for this.
Okay, hi, my name is Briggs Rober. I just had a question regarding the breakdown of the tuition increase. It seemed that there were 4 areas that tuition is increasing. And it seems like all 4 of those specifically are to benefit faculty, which is understandable, but especially like the health and dental plan. It seems like all 4 of these things are specifically helping faculty, but asked to pay for by the students. So I was wondering if we could talk about some of the rationale behind that.
yeah, this is kind of a classic tension that we've had forever in higher ed budgeting and here in the state of Utah, where faculty and staff salaries are kind of pitted against student payments. The rationale of the legislature is that, and honestly, for the higher education system too, is by being able to offer competitive salary and benefits packages to faculty and staff, we can retain the best people in order to help students have that best experience possible. It used to be that number wasn't set at 75-25, but it was set at, that slide I showed earlier, that where we were 37%, we would have paid 37% at Logan, but Snow would have paid 20 and the University of Utah would have paid 50. So the legislature did kind of set this as a across the board 75-25 to try to not be so put such a heavy burden on students, but that's kind of what the policy compromise has been. But it is a balancing act, and it does kind of pit student interests against faculty and staff interests. You're absolutely correct.
Perfect. No, that helps. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Michael Brown. You mentioned that tuition funds the faculty promotion. And there's approximately 86 faculty who have the potential to receive a promotion. With the increase, for any faculty who do not receive that promotion, how is that excess funds going to be used?
Yeah, so that's one thing that we'll have the chance. These are the preliminary numbers. We'll start. That is also, there's meetings happening right now, literally right now as we speak, reviewing those 86 profiles. So as we get farther down the process, we'll be able to refine that a little bit. So the goal would be, if we find out it's less than 86, then we would ratchet that down so that we don't have those excess funds to start with.
So the number that we have right now is based on 86.
Yes.
And if that number changes, the tuition will change.
Yeah, if we have the chance over the next couple of weeks to find out that not all 86 of those are going to make it through the rigorous review process, then we'll be able to revise that down.
We have 2 online.
We had a couple of questions about graduate student tuition and if we have those numbers or if they apply equally to graduate students.
Yes, this would be the same, right, Whitney and Dave? Yeah, this would be the same percentages that apply to graduate student tuition as well.
Okay, and we had a follow-up to the original question online. Why are we paying for the athletes? If I'm not an athlete, why should I pay for their support? Will they pay for my needs?
This is the, another kind of classic tension in higher education budgeting, if you will, of, we want to be able to provide support for our athletic programs and our arts programs and all of those things that make us a well-rounded university. And at the same time, we realize that support has to come from students. So we really are trying to balance that. Um, you know, I know a lot of students, feel like a big part of their collegiate experience is uh, being able to participate and attend at our athletic games, and we want to root for a winning team. And unfortunately, in this environment of college athletics in 2026, it just costs a lot of money. But at the same time, we know that that puts a burden on all of our students who may or may not participate in that. So we're trying to balance that as much as we can. I know the student fee board debated that pretty rigorously. It wasn't a unanimous vote, but at the same time, the board of trustees really wants to make sure that I think have some of the same concerns that are raised in the question. So that's why at this point we're proposing it just as a one-time fee so that we can see what the impact is on our students and really to even discuss more what those funds are used for to see if we can do something to make sure that it tries to benefit the whole student experience as well through athletics. No need. Anytime.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Josie Packer. I was just wondering what the rationale is of having this fee increase for athletics be this year and instead of it being next year, like seeing how we operate in the Pac-12, seeing what kind of fundraising athletic director Walker can kind of bring, and then seeing if we need the fee and like, why are we not doing it opposite?
Yeah. So I think really the thinking there is comparing our athletics budgets to the other, to the schools that will be part of the Pac-12. Utah State is the second lowest of all the schools that have football. And we're basically the same as a school who doesn't even have football with Gonzaga. So we're feeling the need to try to do something to help us make that transition. And then, but I think keeping it one time helps with the things that you raised, Josie, is we'll be able to evaluate it before we have it become like a permanent base fee in there. But you only get one chance to make a strong impression in the Pac-12, and how the Pac-12 launches will contribute to what media rights and other things look like and what revenue we might be able to get from some of those other sources. So I don't know if there is a perfect way to line all these things up, but we felt like this would be a prudent but cautious step to go forward.
Okay, and I have another question with that. Does the Board of Trustees and the Board of Higher Education, will they see the same breakdown of what those funds are going to be going to as were presented to the student fee board?
Yes, they will. And it's within their prerogative though to approve the funds for that sources and really with any of this with tuition and fees, as they make the final approval, they can direct those funds in different ways as well. All of this is input for their decision making, but they're the ultimate decision makers.
Thank you.
Yep. Good questions. We have one more online.
Sorry if this was already covered, but will the tuition increase raise online tuition fees as well from the $145 per credit rate? 405.
Yeah.
That was my mistake.
So the online rate will go up by that same percentage, that same general percentage that's on the slide, the 3.36. Okay, I'm there. I don't see any other questions online or in the room. I'm going to excuse myself to go to the faculty senate meeting, and Brandon will tell jokes and entertain you until y'all want to adjourn. No,
My vision.
or is if there's we didn't talk about how to end this, but I think or we can officially conclude our yeah, we're good. Okay. Well, okay. So this will officially conclude our Truth and Tuition hearing. Thank you all so much for participating here and all of you who are online. We'll keep you informed as this moves throughout the process to the Board of Trustees and the Board of Higher Education in the throughout the rest of the month. And then but your input will be shared throughout all those steps of the process. So
Yeah.
thank you all.
Re-echoing that, like we mentioned, there's a few more stages to this process where there's more room for feedback and suggestions. So feel free to continue to share those with.
Oh, yes. And tomorrow morning, we have a student survey that will be going out to all of you to comment about this or other areas that you see happening around campus. So be sure to check your email inboxes for that. And I really appreciate all the input that we get back from the surveys. So appreciate you taking time to do that and encourage others to as well. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Stay dry out there.